Hi everyone and welcome to Ask Duncan Anything, which is an open meeting with our President and Vice Chancellor, Duncan. So I'm Aisha, I'm the Wellbeing and Liberation Officer here at the Students' Union.
And I'm Lexi, and I'm the Union Affairs Officer here at the Students' Union.
And I'm Duncan, Ivison, President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Manchester.
So you might be wondering why we're all sat here, and that is a fair enough question. So it's part of a new series of student engagement initiatives. So the University of Manchester and the SU are introducing 4 new initiatives aimed at increasing understanding and communication across the uni and the SU. So this includes open meetings such as this one, and it will be between the university senior leadership team and the SU's executive officer team. And we're going to talk about topics where there has historically been a lack of understanding or a lack of transparency. So we're hoping that students get a deeper sense of what we actually get up to at the SU and at the university.
Amazing. We really want this year a strong relationship between the Students' Union and the university, where any belief passed through our union assembly structure will be now shared with the relevant university committee, just to have a formal response from the university. And regular Oxford Road chats on Instagram between Duncan and SU executive officers to provide a platform for open dialogue between university leadership and students. And also there's a new initiative called the Whitworth Debate, which is a university-run initiative which will see a range of seemingly intractable issues debated by people with well-informed but differing and strongly held viewpoints.
So in terms of this open meeting, questions can be submitted via Mentimeter, and the link is in the description on YouTube, which you're currently watching on right now. So nice and convenient for you.
And if by any chance there are some questions we don't have time for, we'll be writing the answers on Student News so everybody can have an answer to that question.
Perfect. Let's get into it. So The first question is, does the university plan to divest from Israeli firms or have any plans to meet with student protesters and reach a viable solution?
So we don't have a policy generally of divesting. That's not to say, though, that there can't be a debate about divestment, and we have committees and structures that always are looking at our investments, looking at our research partners, looking at our external partners. So it's always open to students to put an argument forward for divestment, but we're not currently committed to divesting from any companies right now. We have policies that govern companies that we are comfortable investing in, but we're not currently thinking about divesting. But that's not to say there's a debate to be had about that, and we can talk more about that if it's of interest.
Sure. This one is specifically about Tel Aviv. So do you plan to continue the university's partnership with Tel Aviv University, a university deeply involved in the ongoing genocide in Gaza, including direct collaboration with the Israeli military?
So Senate had a really, I think, good debate about this particular issue at its last meeting, and the decision was not to support any call for severing ties with Tel Aviv University. I mean, it's a complex issue. I don't think it's straightforward that any one university can be held accountable for what its state does in any particular country. That's as true of Tel Aviv as it is for others. So we're not going to, at this stage, cut our ties with Tel Aviv. There are a lot of different views about what's happening in Israel at Tel Aviv University, for example, just as there are here. But again, as I said, Senate had a really good debate about that. There's opportunities for students to put arguments forward, and we want to have a respectful debate about these issues. But at this stage, no, we're not going to sever that partnership. Those partnerships are important to the university for a range of reasons, and I think it's really important that we, talk about what the concerns are. What would that achieve, for example? What does a boycott achieve? What does a university partnership achieve? And what do we want it to achieve? So let's have that discussion.
Sure. So this student has asked, do you maintain the previous Vice-Chancellor's position that it is, quote, ethical for the university to maintain its involvement with the arms trade?
That's a really good question. So, I mean, the university isn't itself directly involved in the arms trade, right? We don't make armaments. But I guess, let me take a step back. Is it reasonable for there to be research that is related to national defense or defense more generally? And I think in a liberal democracy, my own view is yes, it is reasonable. There are researchers for whom this is a relevant area and whose research might in fact be connected to the way that defense is carried out, or the way that defense is thought about across all different ways. Academic freedom, which is a really important principle for the University of Manchester, means that we don't impose particular political or moral views on our staff, within reason. There's always limits. And that means that people should be free to do research or teaching or write about issues that connect with the defense industry or that connect with national defense. Think about the difference between the war in Ukraine, right? And the feelings that people have about that, the wars that are raging in the Sudan region, for example, and the way people think about that, and of course, the terrible situation in Gaza. These are all areas that it is completely reasonable and people should be free to do research that connects to those issues, but in an open way, a transparent way. And moreover, no one should feel forced to do any research they don't want to do, for example. So no one should feel they have to do research in those areas. But, there's three principles here: academic freedom, the freedom to pursue questions wherever they lead you. There's the inclusion principle, which means we need to be committed to making sure that our debates about these issues are inclusive and respectful. And then there's a principle about what I think of as reasonable disagreement. We disagree profoundly about deep moral questions. And I think a university has to model the way those debates occur. We're not a political institution. We're not a firm. We're an educational institution. And that means we need to create the space in which, you and other students and our staff can have those conversations, not to insert ourselves in them. So I guess I see the debate about defense-related research and research that connects to sort of national security and defense issues in that sort of broader context.
Mm-hmm. This one is about accommodation. So most first-year students have their place confirmed at short notice in August and rely on university-owned accommodation. Do you profit from accommodation, and if so, can you commit to a non-profit model?
The university, as first principle, the university is a non-profit institution, right? We don't make profits. Any revenue or income we receive is all about teaching and research, and that applies to our accommodation as much as it applies to tuition, as much as it applies to, the drinks that people buy at the SU bar, right? Everything goes back into the university. So we're a non-profit institution. So we do not make, as it were, profits from accommodation. We do have to find a way to balance the rents we charge with the costs of providing accommodation. And look, I'll be honest, that's a really tough balance, right? Because for all the reasons that people are seeing in the economy more generally, its costs are going up, etc. So we're absolutely committed to providing as much accommodation as we can at the most affordable rates that we can. And there'll be times where, as I know, people will want us to do better. But our commitment is to provide as much accommodation, better accommodation, right? We're going to be trying to provide more and better accommodation at the most affordable rents we can. But it's a balancing act.
Sure thing. Will you commit to meeting with student campaigners and organisations involved in protests, occupations and encampments instead of threatening to expel them?
Okay, sort of a loaded question.
Yeah. It
is. So I'm not threatening to expel anyone. Obviously we have, codes of conduct and rules, and there's the law. And if people violate the law and those codes of conduct and rules, then there are issues that we have to deal with, which up to and including expulsion. But obviously you want that to be the absolute last limit. Mm-hmm. So I'll put aside the kind of expulsion thing. What I'm committed to is to having conversations with students about issues that concern them. And I'm committed to doing that in a range of ways, through sessions like this, through meetings, through different fora. So absolutely, I'm committed to talking to students about issues that concern them and, talking to students in different fora and in different ways. So, I guess we'll see, you can hold me to account for that, and, maybe we'll disagree at times, but that's what I'm committed to.
Sure.
Yeah. I think that's really important with transparency as well. So there's been concerns about the university's reputation due to postgrad students. Have you considered other ways to ease financial stress besides expanding postgraduate admissions?
Okay, so if I understand the question, it's a concern about admissions, or is it a concern about the finances of the university?
I think it's finances to do with like increasing finances based on the admission of postgrad students.
Oh, I see. Good. So look, we're very fortunate. I mean, it's tough in higher ed right now, but the university is in all things considered, okay position. We're quite financially robust, and I think the university's done a good job. All credit to Nancy and others to have us in this position. So, in fact, over the next 5 years, we're not planning to grow dramatically in terms of student numbers. But we are looking at the mix of students that we have, including the mix between undergraduate and postgraduate. Increasing postgraduate numbers is more about thinking around our research ambitions than anything to do with finances per se, because most postgraduate students, are coming here to do advanced research or taught degrees. And that's really about your kind of research culture and your professional sort of degree culture. That's really what we're thinking about, not revenue. So we're not planning to sort of massively increase postgraduate numbers because we've got a financial hole to plug. We will have financial challenges like every university, but we're going to come at those in a slightly different way. So no, we're not going to massively increase, but we are trying to increase the number of postgraduate research students, for example, within the kind of envelope that we've set out, which isn't to grow dramatically.
Sure. So turning back to student accommodation, this student has asked, with the rent strikes and the quality of student accommodation offered by Uni of Manchester being heavily scrutinised, how can you reassure people about the quality of accommodation?
That's a great question. I had a wonderful afternoon at Fallowfield when I visited in March, and then I was walking around the other evening when I was on my way home and got off the bus for one reason or another. What an amazing community, right? And what an amazing thing to be able to offer the range of accommodation we do. But a lot of it, frankly, is not good, fit for purpose, and we need to address that. And we are, as Lexi, as you know, and you're sitting on some of these committees. So we are going to be investing to really try and improve the accommodation we offer in as an affordable way as possible, going back to what we were talking about before. So that's our commitment. We do need to improve the quality. There's a lot of work that goes on every year to try and fix things that are not working, repair things that we can repair. But the big challenge is over the next 10 years, we're going to need to provide a lot more and better and higher quality accommodation. And the current students who are living with the construction going on, thanks very much, respect, it's not comfortable, sometimes I get that, but that's the goal. And the next generation, I think, will benefit enormously, but it's a big challenge. We should have probably been doing it earlier, so we're kind of catching up, to be honest.
For sure. So the Pro-Life Society Committee allegedly made victim blaming and false statements over 2023 to 24. Freedom of speech only goes so far. Many students are left feeling unsafe and targeted. What will you do about this?
So this goes back, so I don't know about the specific comment, so I can't really address that. I mean, this goes back to what I was speaking about earlier. There's this 3 really important principles, right? Academic freedom, the freedom to pursue questions wherever they go, the freedom to express our views about the world and our perspective on the world. The inclusion principle, it says we need to do that in a respectful way. We need to be tolerant of others and make sure we're having broad conversations that are as diverse as possible. And then third, this idea of reasonable disagreement. We also disagree profoundly about really important moral questions. And I think the Pro-Life Society issue touches on each of those issues. The fact that I disagree with someone's view about reproductive rights or about political issues doesn't mean I can shut them down because I don't agree with them. On the other hand, that inclusion principle means that our student societies need to respect other people's views with whom they disagree in the appropriate way. And the disagreement principle means we all have to figure out how to have that conversation. So, as long, I guess, and this is in some senses, I'll put the question back on you. I mean, as long as student societies are abiding by, the rules on which they're established, are conducting themselves in a respectful way, and are engaging with other societies and people who criticize them in good faith, and we're doing this in a way that promotes a really inclusive campus environment, that's okay, right? That's what a university should be about. You don't come here to feel comfortable all of the time. You come here to be challenged. But we need to make sure that we're doing that in the right way. So I guess, in some ways, it'd be good to get your views on whether you think that's happening and whether you think student societies have got that right.
I think, obviously, this is what we were talking a lot about students, a lot to students last year about, and I think it's about making sure the comments that are made are lawful and within the law, because being pro-life is a protected view under religious grounds, and so obviously as a students' union we have to abide by what is the law, and ensure that if there is instances where students feel unsafe, that we're also being there to support them, and ensuring that they feel safe on campus, because the last thing you want is for students to feel unsafe. And obviously students are really able to campaign on these issues, and do different demonstrations or offer different perspectives to these, and that's what we really do encourage students to be able to do.
Yeah, sure. So on a similar vein to what you kind of just picked up on there, trans students do not feel welcome here. There are limited gender-neutral toilets across campus, and name-changing processes are taxing and humiliating. How will you work with the SU to change this?
So look, I guess I'd just say I'm up for any suggestions, advice. I mean, as a newcomer to the university, I've been impressed with the range of gender-neutral toilets, for example. That's really positive, and I know there's plans to do that on a more consistent basis across campus. And coming from previous institutions, I know how challenging the name-changing process can be. So let's work together on that. No one should feel that they can't be who they are and express themselves at our university. So these are things we can actually fix. So let's work together on that.
Yeah, for sure. I'd really like to see it in libraries, with especially the Alan Gilbert Commons, where it's 24 hours, but there's still no gender-neutral toilets.
Okay.
For sure. So will students be able to do FOI requests regarding universities' ties to Israel and be given clear answers? Normal FOI requests are being blocked whilst the university refuses to publish any information.
So I'm not sure if that last part is true, but let me take that on notice. I mean, there's no reason why students shouldn't be able to understand, the nature of our investments. And of course, you can put in FOIs, but there might be other ways we can help students understand what our various investments are. So I'm not sure we've ever refused to publish something. And there are things that might be, commercial in confidence or whatever, but my principle is in general, we need to be open about that. So yeah, look, I'll take that on notice, but absolutely you should be able to ask those questions and get a reasonable answer.
Yeah, definitely. So this student is asking, will the university make a commitment to tangible decolonization? Having a pillar of social responsibility while maintaining ties with apartheid universities like Tel Aviv is performative.
So I think the issue of decolonizing the curriculum is a really important one, and I think there's obviously a debate too about what decolonizing a curriculum means. So let's have that debate. Freshers Week, I walked around with other student union executives and stopped at a couple of the desks where this was an issue, and we talked about that. So I think decolonization is something that my colleagues are thinking about and doing. The particular issue about decolonizing particular curricula in relation to particular universities, that's another issue. Whether any particular country, any particular institution should be the focus of that, we need to have that debate. Not going to make any kind of advanced commitments in light of that.
Sure. And I know that diversifying the curriculum is part of the university's access and participation plan.
Absolutely. I mean, the one additional thing I'll say is, in the upcoming strategy process, one thing I do want to have a really good conversation with the student community about is, how we embed social responsibility in the curriculum, not just around the edges. I love the volunteering ethos, and I love the opportunities that we provide in what we call the extracurricular space, but how do we actually embed it in the curriculum? Now, the other thing is, sometimes people think of social responsibility as a kind of soft thing. It's a nice thing. It's kind of a good thing, and we all agree about it. It's actually a hard thing. And, what does it mean to be a socially responsible university in the 21st century? What does it mean to be a socially responsible citizen in the university? And to go back to an earlier question, for some students, for some colleagues, thinking hard about and doing research or learning about, for example, national security is what it means to be socially responsible. Let's have that debate, right? Social responsibility can mean different things in different contexts. So that's something that'd be great to get the student body talking to us about and thinking about in future.
Yeah, for sure. I know a lot of students would love to have a chat about that.
Yeah.
Sure. The next question is, the university has had previous issues with security on campus, yet nothing tangible has been done about it. Would you be open to conversations with student groups regarding a new proposed model?
Yeah, obviously, you want to get the security arrangements right. As you said earlier, we want our students to feel safe,
Sure.
and physically safe is sort of the bare minimum, right? So obviously, yes. In coming to Manchester, I have to say I've been really impressed with the work that the security team does in often very challenging in environments and very challenging contexts, but very open to having a conversation with students about how we get it better. And there's always things you can improve, there's always new things you learn. So yeah, very, very open to that.
Amazing.
Sure. The next question is a numbers question. How much is your take-home pay annually?
So so this was published not long before I started. So it's £350,000.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate.
Will you engage with students face-to-face and listen to their concerns in an open forum in person? Online feels hostile and disingenuous.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment, because I've had other students say to me, will I appear online more frequently because it's more welcoming and easier for them to engage? So I think, look, it varies. So yes, absolutely. And as Lexi has already mentioned, we're going to try different things this year. And let me say, I also think in person is important, right? Because being in a room face to face is different than being on YouTube. So absolutely.
Yeah, cool. That'll be really good.
Yeah, I feel like it should also be said that we are looking at doing open meetings in a hybrid format going forwards.
I do
So
think
that'd be cool.
it does cut both ways, because students have said to me they prefer to do things online or to email me or to people have different preferences.
Yeah, for sure. I think a hybrid option would be good. So
Yeah.
students that are not able to be in person can also watch back online and ask their questions.
Yeah.
That'd be really good.
Definitely. Okay, so this question says, the curriculum at Manchester is very Eurocentric. How will you be pushing for a curriculum that is representative of our diverse population and decolonise to drive cultural awareness and belonging?
So I'm totally up for that project, and I think a lot of my colleagues are. And as I said earlier, I think we need to have a conversation about what decolonization means. Like, what do students want to see that expresses that diversity of experience and that diversity of perspective? How do we see that reflected in our curricula? What would be meaningful to our students? I'm really up for that conversation, and I think my colleagues are as well.
Yeah, we've recently hired a decolonization strategy assistant at the SU.
Right.
So they're going to be working with different members of the university on best practice and what can be delivered in different areas. So it'd be really nice to have that conversation with them, because they'll be getting feedback from students.
Yeah, I think what's really important to me is that it doesn't become sort of, how should I put it, ideological or kind of rigid, right? Decolonization could mean different things. There are different contexts. Decolonizing a curriculum in history might be very different from thinking about what it means in the context of, architecture or electrical engineering or something, right? So we need to make sure we're doing it in a way that is intellectually rigorous as well.
Sure.
And actually, that's a really exciting intellectual challenge in and of itself. When you think of the history of colonization, there are really profound differences and disagreements about what it means. So let's have that debate as well.
Yeah, sure. So the quiet spaces on campus do not meet students' needs. Will you fund proper quiet spaces with sensory lighting, comfortable seating, like what the SU has been doing in the Simon building?
Okay, so
you better tell me.
We need to follow you guys. So tell me what.
So basically, there's a room in the Simon building which is called the Quiet Zone, and I recently got funding from the Director of Student Experience to put in some sensory lighting items. So we have bubble lamps, fibre optic lights, like a sensory projector. So students can go in there, switch it on, and then switch it off when they leave.
I'll have to go check it out. Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. I do know also, my colleagues, April and Simon and other are really committed to improving the sort of soft spaces on campus, improving the sort of cozy campus concept. So absolutely. I mean, longer term, just to put a plug in here again for the strategy process, we are going to be thinking about the future of our state, right? And what should a university look like by 2035, and obviously before then too. And I think this issue of providing more spaces where students can feel comfortable, stay around on campus, do work and meet each other, have these conversations we've been talking about, the better. And so that's going to be something we look at for the future design of the campus as well.
Yeah, definitely. I know that us student experience officers in the exec team are working on spaces this year, so it'd be great.
Seems like it's a lot better though than it used to be, right? Like I feel as when I'm walking around campus, I mean, having only been here, for the last 2.5 months, whatever, it just feels like there are more of these spaces around. Or you're saying there's not nearly enough, or
I think quiet spaces is there's not really many across campus.
Oh, okay.
They're normally quite loud spaces where social settings, which is good, but also sometimes people need extra sensory needs, have extra sensory needs where they need quiet places, or if they feel overwhelmed, just somewhere to decompress.
Yeah.
And I think you said the other day, Lexi, that the library often, especially at peak times, can just be packed, right?
Oh yeah, it's so busy in there. Yeah. So busy.
Sometimes you can't even get a desk.
Yeah. Or a chair. Either one. So this next question is about our technology and apps, and it's just simply, will you abolish Seats and Duo?
No. I mean, Seats we've just introduced, and it's obviously part of something we're obligated to do. But, I think in the first week, we had something like 35,000 engagement with Seats, and it seems to be kind of humming along. No doubt people will tell me in the following 30 seconds that that's not true, but, up to learn more. And Duo is really a critical piece of technology that protects us from cyber attacks, and we know the consequences of cyber attacks. So if people have ideas about making them more efficient or better, or if someone's got some killer app that we should look at that's even better, that's great. But actually, they're both really important tools for us as we become more digital in our sort of operations. So no, we're not going to get rid of those anytime soon.
Sure. How does the university plan to continue attracting top researchers from around the world, given the significant financial barriers posed by the UK's skilled worker visa system? Yeah,
look, as a skilled worker visa holder myself, I know how challenging that can be, and I had a very fortunate sort of experience, all things considered. So the Russell Group and Universities UK are in constant dialogue with government about the whole visa situation. I have to say, compared to other countries, the UK is becoming increasingly expensive for our best researchers to come. I mean, they have to, I don't know if people know this, but you've got to pay your NHS fees up front over the entire period of your visa, right? So if you're a 3-year or 4-year postdoc coming in, you've got to pay your NHS fees up front for that period. The fees attached to visas are quite expensive. This is really discouraging for young scientists, young researchers, young humanities and social sciences people. I'm really encouraged, for example, that Patrick Vallance, the science minister, has said he thinks it's way too expensive and sort of, borders on the discriminatory. But whether we'll see any changes there, I'm not sure. What we can do is invest in ensuring that we are attracting the very best young researchers. And you'll hear in a couple of weeks that we are going to go out with a program of reinvesting in postgraduate student and younger fellows across the university, because we think this is a really important time to signal that we want people to come to the University of Manchester. So everyone's all very gloomy right now about higher education, right? And there are good reasons for that. But I want us to also be taking this opportunity to say, hey, come be with us, come work with us. But the government doesn't make it easy, that's for sure.
For sure. Just out of curiosity, would the university be willing to lobby the government on changing that system?
So we are. We already are.
Sure.
And it's not just us. I mean, my fellow vice chancellors in the city, all the sector groups are really kind of locked in on this one. The UK, we don't want the UK to be more restrictive than other countries are, and it kind of is going down that track. So we're really working hard to address it. The good thing is, I think the new Labour government is more sympathetic to these arguments than I think other governments are. But I wrote a piece on this in the FT at the beginning of the week. Migration is the disruptive, toxic issue of our time among many disruptive, toxic issues. And we need to be really on the front foot in helping government understand just how valuable, for example, our international students are to us in terms of, the energy and ideas that they bring and the commitment they bring to the campus and how important they are to but then also how our international staff are so valuable to us. You cannot be a globally leading university without, attracting the best talent from wherever they are in the world. And, debates about migration put that at risk if those debates become too narrow and too exclusively focused on sort of narrow political kind of issues. I mean, there are genuine issues about migration that the community worries about. Let's talk about that. Let's do that in a kind of open way. But, international students and our international staff, it's just, they are a precious, massive contributor to our country.
Definitely.
And let's protect that.
For sure. So the next person has asked, do you intend to mend the relationship between the university and its lecturers and temporary staff? For example, by offering greater job security and ending the abuse of probationary contracts?
In principle, we want to obviously we want to have really good relationship with our academic staff, both full-time, part-time, colleagues who are on fixed-term contracts, colleagues who are on more continuing contracts. Within, I think, the first week of arriving, I met with all the union delegates, and we had a really good initial conversation. And they did raise the issue of some of the issues around probationary contracts and some of the issues that they feel, especially younger colleagues, are facing. So yeah, we'll keep talking about that. I'm very committed to open dialogue, working well with the unions. That's been my sort of approach in the past, and we'll continue that here.
Sure. Somebody's asked about IT again. So why are the university's IT systems, e.g. podcasting and seats, so unreliable?
Are we unreliable right now? I mean, podcasting seems to be...
I think
the studio is pretty cool.
Podcasting in the sense of when lectures are finished and they're recorded,
Sorry.
like on that system.
So look, this is all for me to learn, and I'm going to be contributing to a course this semester in the politics department, so I will have personal experience of this, so let me come back to you. But in general, we want these things to work. Yeah. And as I said, right now, Seats is kind of working. If going by all the advice I'm getting and the terrific job that Dan George and the team have done. But yeah, I think with IT you've just got to be committed to iterating and being committed to listening to the users, to the students, to the staff, and just fixing stuff when it happens, learning, going again, and then always looking to improve. And we've got a long way to go in terms of our systems. Let's be honest about that. They are not where they need to be. But PJ and his team in the IT services group are beginning to lay the foundations for us to do the really exciting stuff that I'd love us to be able to do in the future. So keep the complaints coming, or keep the feedback coming, and we'll learn from that and keep getting better. It's never perfect, right? You just got to keep. You got to be willing to keep trying to improve.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And on that note, I learned last week that we have the largest IT system in Europe.
Yeah, we're like we have the largest everything.
Yeah,
the largest campus, largest university.
The biggest, but is it the best?
Largest, and the best as well, of course. Yeah, that's the goal.
So the next question is: academic advising consistency is a real problem at this university. I know a pilot of full-time academic advisors has happened at other universities and been suggested here, but downvoted. But why can't we try?
So I don't know enough about that. So can you tell me more? I mean, maybe do you guys know what has been tried and what hasn't worked? So that's new to me.
So So across the university, across different faculties, academic advising is done differently.
Right.
So it's not like a consistent approach of academic
Okay.
advising. I believe it was Essex or York, but don't quote me on this. It might have been another university, but they've trialled like full-time academic advisors. So they aren't like
Yes.
they aren't like necessarily academics, but like
Okay.
they're like full-time advisors who will be able to.
So
provide that.
Edinburgh has done this too,
Yeah.
and actually I've been talking to the vice principal of students at Edinburgh about this, because this is a real challenge.
For sure.
And it'd be interesting to see what students think, because sometimes students tell me they really want that connection with an academic and their lecturer as an advisor. And I can understand that that's incredibly valuable. And that's kind of the system I experienced when I was an undergrad. Other students have told me, no, it's too inconsistent because some lecturers don't care or don't know enough. I mean, I think, well, they all care, but I think some have more or less time to devote to it. And so they want a more full-time, professionalized, as it were, advising service. I think that's an issue we're going to have to grapple with. And that issue of inconsistency between faculties at Manchester is something that pops up in other areas too,
Yeah, definitely.
right? If people are listening or if people have views about this, let me know what you think, because like I said, I do think there's a real split amongst the student community. And when I talked to my colleague at Edinburgh, they've moved to that professional advising role, and he said he thinks it's better, but he said there have also been lots of complaints about it too, for reasons that have to do with people wanting connections with their academic kind of lecturers. So I'd be really interested for students to tell me what they think on that front.
Yeah, for sure. I think there'll definitely be issues either way, but I think like maybe a pilot of
That's a good
that
idea.
would be, and then obviously maybe for like second or third year students who'd experienced like the old academic advising method and see what the difference is across the two.
I mean, the other side of this is the complexity of the curriculum, and
For sure.
I'm a huge believer in, one of the things a large university like Manchester can do is offer a fantastic amount of choice of majors, for example, fantastic choice for students to sort of explore. On the other hand, lots of choice can be very confusing and can lack integration and lack coherence. So again, through the strategy process, I really want us to have a discussion about, is our curriculum fit for purpose? Are we kind of overwhelming students? I think you can have both. You can have diversity and coherence, but that means then, and of course, then that has a knock-on effect to advising, right? Because if it's difficult to make sense of the curriculum, then you need a lot of advice to navigate your way through it.
Yeah.
So, have we got that balance right between diversity and coherence? I'm not sure. My sense is we've got a lot of diversity without a lot of coherence. So I'd like to have that discussion.
Yeah, kind of just on that note, I did a joint honours degree and I never had an academic advisor, and I think that's by the merit of doing joint honours, we just fell through the cracks. And kind of
that's what I worry
a little
about.
bit.
So I mean, when you guys help us with the strategy process, I'd love for that question to be maybe one of the ones you put on the table, because it'd be great, especially for students who've gone through a degree already. It'd be great to get their feedback about. It was great. I love being able to choose things, and other students already have told me it was really hard to make sense of how I made my way through that degree.
I'll note that one down.
And on just on that academic advising front as well, we did like a survey with students, and it was interesting how you mentioned like people want like the academic side of it. So it was like 55% of students like wanted the academic side of it, and 45% wanted like.
So you've already done a survey. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we have an academic advisor.
So could you flick that to me?
Yeah, for sure.
That'd be great.
It also has like recommendations and stuff in it. So are you aware of the student group claim seeking compensation of tuition fees for students whose teaching was severely affected by COVID-19?
Yes, so I am, and obviously University College London is sort of the focus of that particular legal action. COVID was so hard, right? Just so hard on so many levels, and I guess my general view is that our academic colleagues just did an unbelievable job sort of pivoting and being able to deliver online in the way that they did. And most of the data I've seen around the student kind of experience of that has been generally okay. But having said that, a lot of students really struggled and were really unhappy throughout that experience, partly for reasons out of all of our control. So I'm aware of it. I mean, legal action is a really unfortunate thing to have to revert to in the end, right? It means it's kind of a failure of the student and the institution to kind of reconcile their differing views. But let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm. So kind of turning back to what we discussed a good 20 minutes now about housing. The rental fees in Manchester have been high. Can there be a student discount or whatever? I spent 3 months trying to find accommodation and experienced a really tricky experience.
Yeah, so meaning can there be a student discount in the city as a whole?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I wish that was possible, but it's really beyond our power to have landlords take on a discount. It's an interesting concept, actually, but really hard. I mean, I guess all we can do is work with the various powers that be and authorities in Manchester and the various, renter organizations to help students, first of all, not get ripped off, and to help students ensure that they know their rights about bonds, about the rights that they have vis-a-vis their landlords, right? Having rented in the private sector a lot myself, you need to understand what a landlord can do and not do, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
So I think we can do that, and if we're not, then let's try and do it better. But very hard for us to arrange for a discount, as nice as that would be. It'd be nice to get like a bus pass and a discount on your rent, but we can't quite swing it.
That'd be lovely. In terms of like the know your rights stuff, I know that Elliot is.
So Elliot's been schooling me a bit on that, and I know there's quite a lot that he and the student sort of activist community is doing. But also having met other folks in the city who are working on this more generally, there's a lot of advice and support for students out there. So let's make sure they're at least getting that.
Yeah, 100%. Would you consider building a canteen for students and staff with cheap, healthy food that you sell at cost or with minimal profit?
Like I said, so we're a non-profit organization. So we're not in the business of making profits off of students in anything we do. It's about offering services and investing everything we earn back into the university's, sort of core businesses. I mean, look, we're always looking for ways of providing better services. So let's gather up the ideas. I mean, food security is a really important issue, increasingly important issue,
definitely.
right? And you guys are working on that front. I mean, it's frustrating to think that we have to, be increasing the amount of either free or easily accessible food for students. But let's work together on that front. I realize it's an increasing issue for us.
Yeah, definitely. So the next question is, the job market has actually been brutal these past few years, and the University of Manchester is no longer a good target. What are you doing to improve our employability as a future alum and the overall ranking of the uni? Yeah,
good question. So I'm going to dispute one of those facts. I think we are still the most targeted university in the country for employers to come and talk to our students and recruit our students. So that's an incredibly strong sort of brand to have, an association to have. Secondly, look, there's been a few slips in the rankings over the last 18 months or so, and we're looking really, really closely at those. But however you slice it and dice it, we're a top 50 global university. That means we're in the top 0.002% of universities globally, or something close to that. That's extraordinary, right? Given all the challenges that exist in the UK at the moment, this is a globally sort of outstanding university, and I want it to get even better. So if you're graduating from the University of Manchester, you are graduating from one of the world's great universities. Doesn't mean we can't do better, and we will. The other thing I know is that, and again, I can speak to this coming in new, the career services here are really good, right? We're quite extensive, really very student-facing. I mean, you guys can give me your views, but my engagement with the team has been super impressed. I guess I would encourage. I think it used to be that career services were something you did in your third year or your final year.
Yeah.
I think what's changed is get engaged now. If you're a first-year student listening to this,
For sure.
go along to the career services now, because as you know, there's all kinds of things you can be doing now to build your profile, build your CV. And increasingly employers are looking for that kind of engagement. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a history student or a business student or an engineering student. There's all kinds of programs available to get you ready for work. I mean, you're here to get an education for life. We're not a job training center. But of course, students want to prepare for the jobs that they're going to go off and do once they leave us. So let's make sure we're going to continue to invest in that. I mean, I said in another forum, I think career services are going to become even more important over the next few years with cost of living pressures. Students want to mix studying with work, and they want to line up their part-time work with their future careers. So I'm sure we can do more on that, but get engaged early, and I think that will help even further down the track. But bottom line, you're attending one of the world's great universities. It's still an unbelievably powerful thing to be associated with. Your degree is incredibly valuable, and you'll have that association for life, whether you like it or not. You are a university alum for life, and we want to engage with you throughout that time, and it's an incredibly valuable thing to have.
I think what's interesting about the career service as well is that you can access it after you graduate for 2 years as well.
I love that, and that's fantastic, and not a lot of universities don't do that. So that's unique to Manchester in many ways.
Yeah, for sure. How will you address, this is going back to like financial security, so how will you address student debt and financial insecurity at the University of Manchester? And what steps will you take to promote financial inclusivity for disadvantaged students?
Yeah, good question. I mean, on the last one, in addition to having a new strategy process coming up, the other thing we're doing in 2025 is kicking off the university's first ever philanthropic campaign, so a fundraising campaign. And the difference between just ordinary fundraising and campaign is that you're kind of mobilizing the whole institution around engaging donors and supporters in supporting us for the future. And one of the most important pillars of that philanthropic campaign, which I'm super excited about, is student support, including student financial support. The dream is that every student who comes to Manchester does not have to worry about, at the very least, their living expenses, that every student who gets a place at Manchester gets their financial situation looked after. Now, we're not there yet, right? We're nowhere near that, but that's the kind of audacious, I think, goal we need to have. But in the process, I think we can do a lot better in providing students with financial support in coming into the university and then once they're here. The broader issue of student financial support, I mean, this university has been one of the leading universities in the sector, I think, around cost of living support. I mean, the work that your predecessors did in the SU, I mean, you might have been involved in that last year, but certainly in watching from afar, I was super impressed with the amount of investment the university provided in that really difficult cost of living sort of moment a couple of years ago. So that's really important to continue to think about. About a quarter of our students come from families who would struggle to support their students at university, and we're able to provide a lot of support to that cohort of students in particular, but we need to do more. So the philanthropy campaign is going to be targeted at that. And then finally, I mean, the bigger issue is around the system as a whole and how it's financed and how it's supported. And whatever happens with around tuition fees and future funding models, I think what's encouraging, and it's important for you to know this, is both Universities UK and the Russell Group are committed to any change must be accompanied by an increase in maintenance grants and loans for students. And I think the whole sector is locked in on that. I certainly feel very strongly about that. And I think you'll see that if anything happens, that hopefully will be part of the solution.
Yeah, we've got to continue lobbying for that one.
I think we all do. I think, and there's no, there'll be things that we disagree on in other fronts, but I think on that one, I think we're all locked in.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people are lobbying for the UK to adopt the Welsh system of
Right.
maintenance loans.
Yeah.
So the next question is something which I think all three of us ask ourselves every single day. Why do we get so many emails?
No, and the question is then who reads them all? That's the next question. So I'm very diligent, I have to say. I'm one of those people who, if I see unread, messages on my little Outlook thing, I can't really cope, so I have to read them. But I agree, there's too many emails. But of course, then when you stop sending emails, you start sending WhatsApps, and then when you stop sending WhatsApps, you start texting people. So it's a never-ending circle.
Of course. Okay, this one is regarding feedback. regarding teaching. So does the university take feedback regarding teaching quality of lecturers seriously? And if so, how do they act on this feedback?
Yes, so the short answer is absolutely we do. Heads of school, vice deans of teaching and learning, deans, pay attention to feedback on the quality of teaching, 100%. The more interesting question is then what do we do about it? And I think it's a more mixed story at the University of Manchester, and that's reflected in our NSS scores, which are just completely unacceptable. And that's something that I think all of this leadership team agree, and many, many people across the university agree. So we're focused on that over the next 6 months, particularly around student voice and feedback and assessment. And there's 15 things that we've all agreed we're going to do to try and improve that over the 6 months, and we're really kind of bearing down on that, and I'm paying a lot of attention to it, and we're all working towards it. So the short answer is yes, it's really important, and I really want to encourage students to continue to provide constructive, thoughtful feedback about the quality of the teaching they're experiencing. Then what we have to do is figure out how we can get better at responding to that feedback.
Yeah,
and I think some lecturers and some schools and programs are brilliant at it, and I'm trying to learn from them so we can spread that practice across the institution. But let's be honest, it's not consistent, and that, as I said, is reflected then in the broader feedback that students have. So we need to get better. Now, you guys are doing great work on that front as well, and I've learned a lot from the sort of analytics you've been producing, and I think we've all agreed to the subject student union officers, we've all agreed to really focus on that together. So I think the first test will be the next NSS period. Let's see if we can start turning the dial, but we need to get better at it, but it does really matter.
And how can students learn about those 15 objectives and the progress on it?
Actually, that's a great challenge. So if you don't sense anything changing at all in your discipline, then let April or me or the dean know, because we've all committed to really working on that. And look, they're very simple things. It's about helping students understand the nature of the assessment that they're being that is in the course. It's getting feedback to students more quickly and more regularly. It's not over-assessing you in the course as well. And it's being really clear about you feeling as though we're responding to the comments and feedback you've made. So these are things, like I said, that some people are doing brilliantly, but we're not doing consistently. Then on the student voice side, it's making sure that students are able to attend, school board meetings and program meetings, making sure students are on the right committees. Again, some disciplines, some departments, some schools do this brilliantly. It's great, and they're benefiting from that, but it's not consistent. And I want to say it's not surprising that it's not consistent because it's a big university, but that's not really good enough. I mean, we just have to kind of really bear down on that and get the work done.
Yeah, it'll be really nice to have the school reps on school boards.
Yeah, so as a general, so my view, and we've spoken about this with the leadership team, and April and others are totally, I think, driving this. Is my general view is that there really is no committee that a student shouldn't probably be on. I mean, within limits, but certainly at the school program level. It's really important the student voice is represented there. I mean, what my experience is that the student voice is very strong at the leadership level at Manchester. It's sort of funny because it's the inverse in other places I've been to. Students are super well represented at the local level, but then at the leadership level, it's a bit dicier. Whereas at Manchester, you guys are on all the important university committees, and that's as it should be. It's when we get into the sort of disciplinary level that it's more inconsistent, and that again is reflected in our NSS scores. It's an interesting kind of indication of where we need to get better.
Yeah. 100%. So turning to food, you can tell it's nearly lunchtime. University cafes on campus are extremely expensive. What are your plans to make this more affordable for students, especially in the wake of the cost of living crisis?
Yeah, I don't have any instant answer to that. I guess I'm interested in whether people. I guess the question is, the premise of the question is, we don't have sufficiently diverse food outlets on campus, and I guess I'll just have to take that on notice because I'm not sure how we go about deciding which outlets come on and which don't. I mean, one challenge a university like ours in a big, wonderful city like Manchester has is, you're in the middle of the city, so students have lots of choices and can go off to other places. And sometimes that limits the kinds of franchises or the kinds of food outlets that will come onto your campus, right? It'd be different if you were in a kind of regional area where there wasn't much choice, and then you'd have more power to sort of attract different kinds of outlets. But I'm just going to have to take that on notice. I think it's a hard thing for us to kind of get right. But let me think more about that and learn more about it.
For sure. Does the uni intend to deal with the immense pressure to prioritise citations and references over academic content in research?
I guess I don't reckon. I mean, there's a bad way to promote citations, right? Where you literally, and this happens in some other places, where you literally pay people to, generate more citations, and that's morally a disaster and not good for anyone. I don't recognize the trade-off. I mean, great in some disciplines, citations are a proxy for the quality of the publication. In other disciplines, so for my own, for example, so I'm to philosophy, moral political philosophy, it's what they call a low citation discipline, right? Which means just given the nature of the academic content, you're not going to generate necessarily tens of thousands of citations. In other disciplines, it's much closer to being a genuine proxy for quality. So I think, like everything, you need to, understand the context in which you're assessing the quality of academic work. So I don't think there's a trade-off, right? Citations are actually a way of, one way, not the only way, and should never be seen as the only way of measuring the quality and the impact of a piece of academic research. But in other contexts, it won't, right? There'll be other things that you look for. And then there are disciplines where, what you're really interested in is whether they've changed something in the world, right? Whether they've cured a disease or reduced an incidence of a disease or introduced a new product or changed a process or simply enhanced our understanding of something or asked a better question than we asked before. So, I don't recognize the trade-off. It's one of the things we look at, but not the only thing. Now, having said that, final point is, citations are also used in various ways that other people evaluate and assess our work. And as much as we might not like that, we have to pay attention to it. So, there are areas where the Manchester is probably needs to improve the quality of its work, and citations are one way of us getting a sense of that.
Sure. So looking at the time, we've got 3 minutes left. So I think it's time for maybe one short, simple question, and then we'll finish up. So the final question is, how do you feel at the end of the working day?
How do I feel at the end of the working day? Usually really, really good, because right now I'm just learning really cool stuff every day. I do sometimes have to just lie on the floor and rest, but in general, I feel really, really good. It's just an amazing time for me personally in getting to know the University of Manchester and getting to know Manchester. So I feel good at the end of the day right now. Ask me in 6 months.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
See what happens. Yeah.
So any questions that we didn't have time for will be answered in writing on Student News. And the next Ask Duncan Anything will take place on Thursday, 14th of November at 4 p.m. And the link to register to attend is on Student News, and there will be an option to attend in person as well, as we've taken on some of the feedback.
Amazing. In the meantime, we'll be hosting open meetings on various topics, such as ethical research, university finances, with different members of the senior leadership team. So keep an eye out for the announcement regarding these.
And thank you, Duncan, for joining us.
My pleasure. Great to be with you as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.